All right, so we're continue to talk about the evolution of manufacturing and how the steam engine could be utilized to increase production on the factory floor by being attached to large gear mechanisms, large drive shafts that oftentimes would be up on the roofs or up on the ceilings of these different buildings. And then, of course, we could attach drive belts that would drop down from the ceiling to the different machines that would be running there. And there's some great examples of these items out there on YouTube. You can kind of see some examples of some of the old manufacturing plants that would use this type of a drive belt system. So, but we're also going to talk here in this lecture about the continuous process manufacturing, concept of interchangeable parts, mass production and assembly lines here as well to finish up this lecture. So when we talk about continuous process manufacturing, those production lines basically are running 24/7. Now, during the time of the Industrial Revolution, especially in the steel making industry, when steel mills would come about, oftentimes those mills, and you will learn a little bit more about how steel is made and how we get all the different types of variations of steel and aluminum and brass and bronze in the ENGT 200 industrial materials class. But oftentimes in that process, it takes so long to heat up those furnaces, because furnaces and a high amount of heat is needed in order to melt the raw materials in order to make and pour steel. So you can't really shut those furnaces down, so they would kind of continue, and you can do a continuous pour through that. So oftentimes when we talk about continuous process manufacturing, that is nonstop, keeps on moving. And if that production line shut down, there's a reason, and it's probably not a very good reason why it's had to been shut down, especially at that. Now I'm kind of calling on my past experience in manufacturing with Crown Cork and Seal, where I used to work many years ago. Of course, here in Decatur, over in Warrensburg, we did have the Crown Cork and Seal aerosol canning plant. So I'm going to kind of show this aerosol video of how aerosol cans would be made, and that's kind of similar to the process. Again, this was out there in Warrensburg. Unfortunately, Crown closed that plant last year, but this gives you an idea of what you would have seen at the Warrensburg manufacturing plant by Crown making aerosol cans and how they're done. So you kind of see sheet metal aluminum comes in. So this is the lithography type of process where they're printing on the outside of the actual cans, doing logos and different items to imprint that steel. So, and then you see it, that steel starts to get cut up into smaller strips of material and starts to get rolled and formed into the shape of the actual aerosol can. So now you have the cylinder body of the can. So you've got some blanking that's going on here for the lids. So that's called a cupping action as we go on going. So all of these lids then continue to move down. So you have different areas of the factory kind of coming in and making these different aerosol cans. This is a cleaning station that's or a coating station that's going in to either spray some coat in there to clean it or something else. So notice how fast this production line is and how many of these aerosol cans are there. So the canning industry in America and Europe is huge. So we consume as consumers. We go through an awful lot of this type of packaging there. So there's quite the need for it. So that kind of shows you and gives you an idea of what aerosol cans were looking like. So, and that video was good to kind of show you and give you an idea of what we're talking about when we refer to continuous process manufacturing. The next really important idea or concept that came out of the Industrial Revolution was the idea here of interchangeable parts. Now, Eli Whitney is kind of given credit for coming up with this idea. So, although his claims, much like several other claims by inventors done at that time period, are often nowadays disputed, and we're finding out more and more that there were other people that involved that kind of maybe did this as opposed to Eli Whitney. But the idea, of course, behind an interchangeable part is that no matter where that part is made or manufactured, you have specific sizes and tolerances on there, so you can basically take out a used part and just replace it with a brand new part, and everything goes back together perfectly and works and functions as intended or as designed. Now, of course, prior to this idea and concept of the interchangeable parts, again, all of these parts were custom made, hand scraped, hand filed, handmade, and custom fit so that they could work as intended. So this idea of interchangeable parts really revolutionized manufacturing in terms of assemblies and products that required multiple parts in order to go together and be made. So the idea that you could basically have multiple parts and just change out a part with another one and it would go together and fit perfectly every single time was very important here for us to be able to do what we currently do in today's manufacturing environment. Eli Whitney was given kind of credit for this, of course, through his firearms and manufacturing of firearms. He was trying to get the government contract with the U.S. military. So, and in process, he basically had his craftspeople more or less kind of custom make. So he kind of fudged the actual interchangeability. So when he had his craftspeople make specific interchangeable parts so that they could work, so that he could kind of dupe those U.S. Army representatives to get the contract and build the contract. So he's a little bit notoriety here as a bit of a shyster on some of this in terms of interchangeable parts. That, I suppose, probably comes about with also some of these early inventors and innovators at that time also kind of had to be a little creative, I guess, in the way that they sold their products, their goods and services. And some of them probably kind of got a little bit more notorious than others. So as we talk, we began again to become more and more involved with mass production, where we were having thousands of products being produced. So that gave rise to a need for a large number of parts and even more higher production. Of course, the more parts that we make, the lower our costs generally could become. So we started to get lower and lower cost on these products, and that lower cost meant that the general everyday person could start to afford items that traditionally would have only been available for the very wealthy. And of course, here you see the old Ford automobiles, and we'll talk about the next evolution in manufacturing here that came. But at one time when, and you think about it even today, when new innovation or new technology comes out, it's usually fairly expensive. Not everybody buys it or not everybody adapts to it right away. But as time goes on, the price of the product kind of drops and it becomes more and more available to other people as well. So, of course, the other big thing that came out of the Industrial Revolution was the development of the assembly line. Henry Ford is given credit for this assembly line, although it was not his original idea. So he got the idea basically after touring a meat processing plant, kind of looking at the way the meat processing industry kind of butchered and slaughtered the animals that they were doing. So basically he broke down the assembly of the vehicles that he was making to a simple single task as a product was kind of moved down the line. And so that process, of course, was then divided in several steps. So when you could have simple repetitive tasks, which made automobiles become more affordable and widely available, it also increase the speed that we could actually make and manufacture some of this and assemble this product. So that assembly line concept is still kind of key and is still utilized today, although it is not the same as it was back, 100 plus years ago. So the use of course, of the assembly line and this idea also caused a lot of other additional labor struggles there as well. So in some of the labor battles of the early or the late 1900s, early 2000 or early 20th century started kind of brew as a result of some of this type of processing. So that is, of course, the end of this lecture on how the Industrial Revolution impacted. So our next lecture here on Chapter 2, we will kind of go into trends that were part of manufacturing, modern day trends, and of course some of the legal, ethical, and regulatory aspects that manufacturers have to adhere to as well. So thank you for joining me. I always like and enjoy talking about the historical context and the Industrial Revolution and how it has impacted our modern manufacturing world.